Hello everyone, welcome to another video on the channel. It's another Monday morning, it's week 23 and it's another GT Sport Daily Race C strategy guide. This week we are in the Group 3 machinery and we are heading to the Nurburgring GP circuit. So here is the detailed settings for this one. We've got 10 laps to get round, tyre wear at ×7, fuel consumption at a rather unusual ×1, and we have the racing soft and the racing medium tyres available, both of which I am 99.9% are going to be mandatory. So it is a fairly familiar combination, this one, in terms of GT Sport, but not actually for Daily Race C. Since I've been playing Gran Turismo Sport maybe around about 3 years now, this has never been a Daily Race C Group 3 at the Nürburgring. It's a very nice combination, very popular in FIA. I do feel the Group 3 cars perform very nicely around here. There's a very nice flow to it in these cars. And so I am very much looking forward to this one. I think we've got some nice settings in there with the tyres and the fuel and 2 different tyre types. We should be in tune for a pretty entertaining and hopefully quite a lot of variety in terms of the cars as well when it comes to this race. So our car of choice for the strategy guide here and the test is the Toyota FT1. Now the Nürburgring would very much be considered a handling circuit. And usually if you go for a handling car, you're going to go for those MR cars, something like the Audi or the Renault RS01. However, for reasons that we shall explain a little bit later in the video, mainly due to the tyre wear, we have decided to go for the stability of an FR car. And Toyota FT1 in terms of the FR cars is probably one of the best handling. So that is really the background behind why we've chosen this car for our test, other than the fact that it also has a very nice cockpit view and sounds fantastic. So the first order of the day when it comes to all things strategic is to work out how long these soft tyres are going to last with the tyre wear at ×7. In order to really kind of gauge when we want to be moving off those soft tyres onto the medium tyres, then we need to give ourselves a medium tyre benchmark. So that's what we're doing here. Before we sort of headed out on our soft tyre run or our soft medium run, we do some laps on the medium tyres. In this case we just did the 3 laps. We actually did a very nice lap here on lap number 3. This gives an idea of what kind of pace we can get out of the medium tyres, and then moving on to our soft run. Once we kind of start hitting those kind of lap times, we know we will be quicker on the medium tyres and it's time to move off our soft tyres. So as we go back on board with the soft tyre run here, we are halfway through lap number 5. Now you can see from the lap times 2, 3 and 4 we have managed to remain under that 156.2 that we were able to do on the medium tyres. So far so good as we get to the halfway point of this race. The soft tyres are definitely going to be able to be quicker than the mediums up till this point. However, as we came through the third checkpoint there, we were a second down on our best lap, and I predicted we were probably going to fall beyond that benchmark. So into the pits we're going to dive now. This is going to give us an idea of the pit loss and the fuel. Do be careful on that pit entry as well. Like most tracks, the pit entry can be quite difficult, but I have seen people crash into the wall. They go into the corner because you have to drive the actual last corner in the pit lane. They go in there a little bit too hot, into the wall they go, and they have a rather embarrassing accident. Do not be that driver. Now this is quite a lengthy pit stop, as you can see, taking us 22 seconds to get the car into the box. Tyres are changed in 4.8. Pit time comes in at 28 seconds. It all amounts to just a shade under 22 seconds lost in the pits. Now when you leave the pits at the Nürburgring, I highly recommend staying to the inside of the pit lane. This means that cars coming down from the racing line are going to arrive at turn 1 at very different speed to you having left the pits. They're very tempted to go for the dive bomb. Just by sticking to the inside you can kind of mitigate that risk a little bit, put them off a little bit, and hopefully avoid some confusion and hopefully accidents. I've seen many a racer's race be ruined as they leave the pits at the Nürburgring and they get dive bombed and T-boned into turn number 1. Believe me, I have been that driver on far too many occasions. Anyway, back to the strategy. We're on our medium tyres now. How are they performing? The question is, steady would be the answer. They're not as fast as you might think. That's kind of down to the fuel. Because the fuel's only at ×1, the car is nowhere near as light as you might expect at this point in the race. So you're actually not burning a whole lot of weight off the car by the time you pit at the end of lap number 5, compared to when the fuel's maybe at ×2 or ×3. In terms of lap time though, the medium tyres probably by the time we do our first flying lap there on the mediums, a 156.2 are faster than what we're about to do on lap number 5 on our soft tyres. Not really sure what went wrong here on the last lap on the mediums. You can see we're getting a bit of an oversteer moment coming out of the last corner there, but we were just way off the pace. I'm not entirely sure that is representative of the medium tyres. I think the medium tyres will stay very steady throughout that second stint of 5 laps. But that is us finished that first run. 19 minutes 49.7. We actually had 1.5 seconds worth of penalty, so more like a 19.47 to be more accurate. The track limits here can also obviously be fairly dodgy, particularly into that last chicane, where you have to take a lot of curb, but if you get a little bit too generous, then you're going to pick up some penalties. So let's move on to looking at the alternative strategy. This is starting on the medium tyres and then finishing on the softs. Now I was kind of curious in just how far we could push these soft tyres. So we've just done the 3 laps on the mediums and we're doing 7 laps on the soft tyres here. Now I knew we were going to be in trouble towards the end on these soft tyres, given they were giving up a lot of their grip by lap number 5. 7 laps was always going to be a little bit of, not quite a struggle, but they were certainly going to be far past their best by the time we got to the end of the stint. So in terms of lap time between laps number 5 there, our first flying lap on these soft tyres, and lap number 9, we've actually dropped off in pace by around about 1.4 seconds. So it gives you an idea of just how much these tyres are going to start dropping off once you sort of push them beyond lap number 5. Now the car doesn't feel undrivable at this point on the soft tyres. I always say that soft tyres have to get to around about 35 to 40% of grip before the car becomes very difficult to drive, and we've not quite hit that threshold yet by 6.5 laps now on our soft tyres, but the lap time, we are just bleeding lap time more than anything else. So we're 1.5 seconds down on our best lap there through the third checkpoint. Just got the chicane to go, braking just before the 100 metre board. Not a brilliant effort on the chicane, probably broke just a little bit too late there. That's a little bit down to the tyres and kind of got the first part of the chicane wrong. Into the last corner we come now, just give you an idea of how much the lap times have dropped off as we get to the end of lap number 7. 1.893, so a 157 to finish on, which again, what's quite interesting is laps 9 and 10 there are actually considerably slower on the soft tyres that are obviously fairly old than we were doing on the medium tyres in the first stint. Now, let's talk about the MR cars now, because the MR cars around here, as it is very much a handling circuit, are very fast, but they do become very sketchy, particularly when we move into race trim. So I think the MR cars are going to be very much up there when it comes to the qualifying boards. The Audi, the RS01, I suspect the Lamborghini might make a little bit of an appearance there as well. However, when it comes to race trim, they start to burn out those rear tyres, and they can become very tricky indeed. So the car we're in here to test the MRs is the Renault RS01. Very funky cockpit, I think you might agree, and we are running a test here in comparison to the Toyota with the second strategy run that we did in the FT1. So that's 3 laps on the medium tyres, 7 laps on the soft tyres, and I wanted to just get a feel for how these MR cars would react after doing the 7 laps on the soft tyres, and maybe try and sort of demonstrate why the MR cars might not be for you. Now there will be plenty of drivers out there that will be able to manage these FR cars over a strategy like this. I see it all the time. I see people who are all over the place in something like the Audi, and then other people who look like they're just absolutely at home with these MR cars, even with the rear tyre wear. Now in terms of drivability of the car, I was quite surprised actually the Renault didn't feel too bad at this stage in the race. There is a lot of oversteer, but it's a manageable oversteer. I wasn't feeling completely in control of the car or scared of the car, but certainly having to give it a little bit more respect over the curbs and the acceleration zones compared to the FT1. Now interestingly, in terms of lap times here, given that we're both doing the exact same strategy, the FT1 for laps 9 and 10 did a 56.6 and then a 57.0, and the Renault here has done a 57.2 on lap 9 and finishes with a 57.8. Now that is just purely down to the tyre wear. I think the Renault over 1 lap is actually a quicker car than the FT1, but once the tyre wear comes into play, it's a slightly different story, and actually finishes 4.1 seconds slower over the course of the race distance. So the MR cars are fast, but they're definitely a little bit sketchy, and just don't be fooled sometimes by what you see on the leaderboards. As I said, I think the qualifying leaderboards will be very much dominated by the MR cars. I think a lot of people just see that, they jump into the race in these cars, once that tyre wear kicks in, they're all over the place, they're spinning out, and they rage quit. It's a very common thing to see in daily race C, where the MR cars are strong in qualifying. Anyway, we moved on to that part of the video now. All that information up on the screen, all the information we've garnered over the course of the video, they are up for you, all those people who can't understand my Scottish accent. I put it all up on the screen here. This is for you folks, and hopefully you find it useful, but we will just talk through it anyway. In terms of strategy, it's going to be a one-stop strategy. Now, I say it's going to be a one-stop strategy. If by some miracle it's only the medium tyres that are mandatory, then this becomes a no-stop on the medium tyres, because no matter what other strategy you run, you're not making up 22 seconds in the pits, that is for sure. Now, for me, the optimal strategy, this is the strategies where you can maximise lap time, and these are going to work best when you're able to lap without too much interruptions or fighting with other cars. So the crossover basically comes at the point where you're kind of able to maximise your lap times. In terms of the optimal strategies, you'll do 5 or 6 laps on the soft tyres and then 4 to 5 laps on the mediums. Because the fuel doesn't burn off in quite the same way, just being at ×1, then the optimal strategy doing the alternative is pretty much the same. 4 or 5 laps on the mediums, 5-6 laps on the soft tyres. Now if you're looking to do the undercut strategy, so this is maybe starting in the bottom half of the grid or the mid pack, you might be starting on those mediums, 2 to 3 laps on the mediums, 7 to 8 laps on the soft tyres. Now I have shown you even in the MR cars you can still do 7 laps on the soft tyres. Now this is the strategy you're going to kind of employ if you're trying to move forward through the pack. By stopping early, you gain track position after the pit stops. The risk here comes that towards the end of the race you're going to have pretty bad tyres and maybe come under threat. But this is kind of the strategy you have to kind of go for if you're going to try and move forward from the mid pack or the rear. I see far too many people, they just persevere, try to do the optimal strategy, they get embroiled in fighting and all sorts of stuff. They're not able to maximise their lap times. They're lapping 2 to 3 seconds slower than they probably could do, and they'll then go into the pits. They end up in exactly the same group of cars, fighting all the way to the finish and basically just blowing the strategy. So if you're going to go for that kind of strategy, you have to commit early, get into those pits, get the better tyres on, gain track position, and then try and hold on at the end. And talking of the end, we are approaching the end of the video. Let's finish as we always do with a lap guide of the Nürburgring in the Toyota FT1. On the way down to turn number 1, you're looking for the 100 metre board, but you do want to be braking just a little bit before that. Get the car nice and slow down a straight line. You want to be at a 90-degree angle on the apex of turn number 1 for the Nürburgring. See far too many people going far too deep and then completely compromising their exit. Now through the first tricky sector, it's just all about failing the throttle, finding the optimal line, not stressing the tyres too much, and you should be golden. Now the cones provide a nice marker for this left-hander. Compromise your speed into this left-hander to get a better line for the right-hander. This is then preceded by a little bit of a straight down towards the Dunlop curve. Now as you approach the Dunlop curve, there is a curb on the left-hand side. It's great. Just after the start of that you can brake. Get into the inside of the corner, use the camber to bring the car round and slow the car round. Nice clean exit, and we're heading towards the Schumacher S's. Now we can't quite take these full throttle the majority of the time. There will be cars out there, I did notice in the Renault RS01 on the soft tyres, I could take that at full throttle even in race trim. Green curb on the right hand side, just before the start of that is your braking point for the left hander there. Just want to be carried as much momentum and speed as you can through the right hander here. This leads on to the back straight. Got a little bit of a kink here, This is a good overtaking opportunity on the way down to the chicane. The 100 metre board as your reference, you do want to be braking before that. Taking lots of curb, being nice and liberal, you're going to see we take far too much curb on the second part of the chicane and we pick up a half-second penalty. It is one of the easiest penalties to pick up on the game. However, you serve it on the run down to the Dunlop curve. It doesn't actually compromise your lap time too much. However, you do want to be avoiding them all the same. Over the start finishing line there, again, they're not really lap guides these, they're more just kind of me pointing out a few things about the circuit as we do a lap. Anyway, very much looking forward to this one. Should be a very nice race, hopefully a good variety of cars out there. Anyways, all that is left to say is please do hit that like button, please do hit that subscribe button if you like what I'm doing on the channel. Don't be afraid to leave a comment, I do my very best to reply to every comment that people leave. Hopefully you can comment, say hello, let me know what you think of the video, let me know what you think of this race. Hopefully I'll see you on the grid though. If not, have a good week's racing and I shall see you on the next one. Goodbye now.